Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining us today for our Reporting and Analytics 201 course. So today we're going to go through Reporting and Analytics. This course is best enjoyed by our system administrators, company administrators, workspace administrators, but if you are not an administrator, please stick around for the next hour. I'm sure you will learn some cool things about iMeet Central as we talk through this really powerful feature together. Our goal today is to identify and understand available reporting views within iMeet Central and to demonstrate how reporting and analytics are used to drive value. Visibility, so guy in the cockpit looking out, beautiful clouds. Again, good reporting allows you to forecast and see what's coming up. Measure return on adoption. And now on number 3, why is reporting important? It helps you to govern your platform, so it's going to help you to measure where people are using the platform and see what kind of features are being used. Sometimes I get called in by customers to help with a configuration or review how they're using the tool, and I notice that there's a lot of clutter. I see a lot of incomplete tasks. I see a lot of workspaces that haven't been used. I see a lot of files that people aren't looking at, and I use reporting. And I'll walk the customer through a report and say, look at your workspace usage. Like, there are some workspaces we can archive here to make life a little easier. If you ever attend the design and layout class, I talk a lot about keeping things simple and clean. And I'm a big believer in not putting stuff in iMeet Central if it's just going to create clutter. Good reporting is going to help you to identify where that clutter is. And the last thing is, good reporting will help you to drive user adoption. And where you find that value in a report is, we all know that there are some core features within the tool, right? There's files and discussions, there's projects, there's databases, there's wikis, there's uploading, downloading, comments, discussions, and so on. With good reporting, you're able to address user feedback when people start maybe complaining about using iMeet Central. People say, I can't find the file I'm looking for when I log in, it's a total pain. Well, with a good report, you're able to look and see, well, how many folders do I have in a workspace? Maybe my folder tree is too complex. So reporting can help you address those pain points. So how do you create a good report? The first step, these really should be numbered. I don't know where they're bullet pointed. The first step is to first ask yourself, how are you being measured? So whenever you're thinking about creating a report, especially a custom report, the first thing you want to do is just talk about what are the features that you're using and understand how they're being used. So are you using a workspace per project, or are you using a milestone per project? Are you tracking time? Do you use milestones to group together task lists? Depending on where you do work is where you're going to want to create property fields to track data. A real good implementation of a reporting process is one that doesn't require your users to change the way they work, but instead to capture data on the things that they do today. The next thing you got to ask is, well, what type of information is going to generate that measurement? So do we need people to manually enter in things for us to track? Or do we want to try and create some sort of cool workflow that will keep track of when things happen? The last thing to consider is knowing where it would make sense to capture that information. So when you create custom fields, let's say like a workspace property field, you can bury that property field and people would never find it. A really common trick is that you have a workspace property field in the creation wizard layout, but not on the view or edit layout. So after the workspace is created, it's almost like that property field is vanished. Nobody can change it, technically. Not even a workspace administrator can make a change to a field that is not in the edit layout. But if it's in the workspace creation wizard, you're able to capture data at the time of creation. So that's an example of burying a data point for capturing reporting. But you may decide that based on how you're being measured, you need to make sure that where people can record that data is more accessible. All right, so let's talk about our reporting options. There are 2 major categories of reporting in iMeet Central. The first is system reports, and the second one is custom reports. you can find system reports either within company setup or workspace settings. So the first one here says system reports used to measure system captured data such as usage and actions accessible only to company and workspace administrators. And the top one there says number 1 company reports. If you are a company administrator, you can go into company setup, click on the reports tab, and you can find all kinds of cool system reports there. We're going to look at some in a moment. If you are a workspace administrator, you can click on the settings tab and you can look at usage reports. Now, workspace usage reports, they look similar to company reports. There are just a lot fewer of them. System reports are capturing data that's gathered by our server as users click through the system. So we capture things like when did somebody last log in, or how often was a file viewed. System reports are not related to custom property fields. They are entirely used to help you manage your internal user list and identify whether or not there's content in the system that can be archived or cleaned out. And again, we'll look through some of those here in a moment. The second type of report or category of report is a custom report. Now, this is where people spend a lot of time, and you can get a lot of value out of this. Custom reports report on content in the system using system fields and custom property fields. All internal users can run reports, but will only see what they have access to. So, when you're logged into the system, in the top right corner, there's a Create button. If you click on it, you can create stuff. If you have the permission, you can create a workspace, for example, and you can also create reports. And when you click on Report, it takes you to this screen. In the screenshot here, it says Select Report Type, and you can build whatever custom report you want. Any internal user can do this. So Joe Schmo, working in accounting, who's in 2 workspaces, can technically create a report. The thing is that they will only see the data that comes from workspaces they are added to. So if Joe Schmo is in 2 workspaces and you are in 50 workspaces, if you both run the exact same report, you are going to see a lot more content than Joe Schmo. In this way, reporting is not a backdoor into finding data from projects you are not added to. So the reports will respect permissions. This is important to keep in mind because sometimes people will save reports and they'll send them out to their team, and the team will come back to them and say, I'm not seeing anything. Make sure that they're added to the workspaces that data is pulling from. So, custom reports rely on tracking data using property fields. We create custom property fields where users can store data for us to report on. This is a manual process. You create a little drop-down menu or a checkbox or a text field somewhere where a person has to key in a data point for you to report on. There are 5 areas of custom property fields. The first are user custom property fields. And beside each one, I've got some examples of things I've seen and things that maybe will ring a bell for you. User profile fields. So right now, by default, a user profile has a person's name, contact phone number, address, department. But you can create additional ones that a person can go onto their profile and they can update. Some things would be like whether or not they can travel, when their last training completed date was. And this one I've actually seen is other languages spoken. I've seen a client that works internationally and they keep track of languages that people speak. They've got like a user list of 300 users or something, and they literally will get projects that come in with a preferred language. And so they'll say, we need to find a list of people who can speak Spanish, for example. Workspace property fields oftentimes track things like project status, project type, or total budget. Time tracking property fields are great for if you use our time tracking feature and you are doing any billing or finance work and you need to differentiate between hours that were worked on site or remote, or whether or not that time was billable to the client. So as you all know, those of you who work in like agencies, you're billing hours toward projects. You may not bill 100% of your time. You may work 20 hours and bill 10 for whatever reason. So some teams like to add a little billable checkbox to their time tracking records. So they go, oh, I know what I'm actually asking my client to pay me for. Milestone property fields, I've seen total cost and invoice number on a milestone. But here's another one that I've seen that's kind of fun is priority level. You can give a task a priority, but you can't give a milestone a priority. So I've seen a team before create a priority level custom milestone field so that they can run reports to say, like, show me all of my high priority milestones and show me all of my low priority milestones. I think they did it for like a CRM or something like that, if I remember correctly. The last one is tasks. So this is a really common one that I kind of like. It's a task property field that I've created called delayed reason. A lot of teams say, if somebody moves a task due date, how do they let someone else know why it got moved? And the most common approach is people make a comment, right? You change a task due date, you make a comment, you @mention people and say, this is late because the vendor didn't come back in time. Reporting on comments, you can't report on comments, but you can report on custom task property fields. And so I've seen people create a delayed reason field. That's really neat. It's like a drop down, and so you can indicate, like, why was it delayed? What was the vendor? And they run reports on that. But you can also do tasks like responsible team, and if you wanted to do like really cool custom filtered calendar reports, you can actually have a property field on the task that indicates whether or not it should show up on a calendar. All of these fields are created and maintained and managed within the Custom Fields tab in Company Setup. Now, when you create custom reports, they are most powerful, and this magical word, nutritious, when they are used against one another in like a matrix. So by using property fields across the platform, you can create a versatile reporting platform to identify data relationships. This screenshot might look similar to an Excel spreadsheet that you're currently using to keep track of stuff. If you've got an Excel spreadsheet with columns and rows, we can translate that into a report in iMeet Central by creating property fields for those columns and rows. And we can report against data points. You can pull in Workspace custom property fields with time tracking property fields. You can pull in Workspace and user property fields. Here's an example. So let me use my awesome laser pointer. Check out this special effect. Woo! There is a milestone row here, and there is a user column. So you can imagine if you've got user custom property fields and milestone custom property fields, you can create reports like how many open project timelines of a given type do we currently have for a specific department of users, where you have a milestone type and a user department, and you're using those data points to create a story. Another example, workspace and time, for example. So you can pull in custom time tracking property fields, and you can pull in custom workspace property fields and create a report like, how many billable hours have we worked on a project of a specific type? Or you could have like a workspace for client, say, how many billable hours have we worked for a specific client, for example. So the point is that as you start thinking about your reporting needs, walk through those first few questions. You know, identify what is it that you need to report on, how are you going to capture it, and then turn to this list and say, where can we track this stuff, knowing that you can always make those changes here. Patrick, good question. Can I mass update user profiles, for example, if I need to modify the department field? Currently, no. That's a really great suggestion, though. I like that idea, but we don't have that in the system right now where you can mass update custom user profile fields. All right, so let's take a look at the platform. Before we do, I'm going to look over back at the question box. Patrick always has great questions. Thank you, sir. Not seeing any others right now, so I'm going to go ahead and take us into the system, and we're going to take a look at some of this stuff. Let's demonstrate. Woohoo! All right. So here I am logged into iMeet Central. This is a would SSO solve this? Patrick is asking, would SSO solve this for that mass update? If you've got like an ADFS server or something like that, and you're keeping track of a single sign-on database elsewhere, maybe you can try and track that, but you cannot push SSO data into the internal user field using like an API. Now, if you wanted to dive into the API developer, maybe there's a way. I haven't seen anybody do it, but no, I don't think SSO would solve it. SSO just lets people log in with an email address. All right. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. All right, here we go. So let's take a look at some of these reports that we find in company setup. So in company setup, if you're a company administrator, you can go to the reports tab and you can find some of these system reports. And there are a bunch. I'm not going to show you all of them. I'm going to show you some right now that I think are most nutritious and explain what their context is. These are the reports that we see people run the most often. I'll work my way down from the top. I'll skip a few. Usage by internal members. I'll do the last 90 days. This is a really great report for seeing the total number of page views by user per period. This gives you a sense of how often are people clicking and looking at things. So you can come through this list and you can say, in the last 90 days, Lily Savage hasn't looked at anything. Maybe we should reach out to Lily, see if she still needs her license. It's a really great talking point to maybe free up an internal user, for example. But conversely, you can also go through here and find your real top users, like Kevin, for example. Kevin uses the system a lot. I can go over to Kevin and say, hey, Kevin, I see you're in the system all the time. How's it working for you? Do you have any ideas or suggestions? You're in there more than anybody else. The next report that's fun to run is the Workspace Access by Internal Members report, right here. This report shows workspaces that a user can access. Now, it comes over in this like list form. Why is this report interesting? Well, you can export it as a CSV file. And where this is valuable is that if you are in the middle of a really, really, really busy time, you've got, 40 projects and you've got dozens of people working on things, you can grab a snapshot of all the projects a person is currently involved in and save it for historical reporting down the road. To be able to look back a year from now and say, Andrea Caravis on this day was working on these projects is a pretty interesting piece of audit data that you can pull and save. Some teams run this report once a year. Some teams run this every couple of months. Other teams I see it used best run it whenever they find themselves really busy. They just grab a quick snapshot and they tuck it away. There are external user reports, which are very similar, grouped down here. They function in the same way as the internal user reports. The next one we're going to look at here is the usage by unique logins in the last 90 days. This report shows you the number of times users have logged into the system. Now, this is different than page views. This is the number of times a person has gone to the login page and logged in. So you can see here that Byron has logged in once in the last 90 days. Some other people have logged in never. Now, at a glance, this looks really similar to that first one we looked at, right? Usage by internal members. Well, what's the difference? What I do sometimes is I'll export this as a CSV. And then what I sometimes like to do is I like to do the usage by internal members report, and I'll export this one as a CSV so I can get these two columns next to each other, and I compare logins by page views. It's just a fun little thing to look at sometimes. And what you're looking at here is when a person logs in, how productive are they every time they log in? If you're noticing that a person has, 200 page views per login versus someone who has 5 page views per login, you're now starting to get a better picture of, well, why isn't that other person using the system as much? So you can have conversations around that data as well. Back to our list. The Workspace Audit Log, perhaps the most powerful report in the entire platform. The Workspace Audit Log shows you historical data against files and tasks. It shows you when people have made changes to things. It shows you when people have viewed public links. You can even from here go in and blow things up and look at comments that were made, this report is exceptionally powerful if you ever notice that things are changing in workspaces and you don't know why. Files are being deleted, tasks are being changed, you've got a team of 50 people and you can't figure out who's doing it. Come in here and run your Workspace Audit Log report, and you can gather a lot of information from this. You can also export this as a CSV if you wanted to do a search or sort by column and so on. So Workspace Audit Log, that pulls across all workspaces in the system. The Active Public Links report shows you a list of all of your current public links in the system. A public link is one where if in a workspace in your access and security area you have turned on file sharing, this will let you see all of the links that are currently available for people to go and find. Some teams don't use public links that much. So if you ran this report, you might not see a whole lot of data. Some teams use it a lot. But it's important to look at because it helps monitor security. It helps you manage the system. Because if there is a public link to each one of these files, technically these are all gateways into looking at content in the system. There's a lot of public links we have open right now. Most of them were created quite a while ago, though, if I look through my created column. So you may decide somewhere floating out in the internet could be a link to this PDF from way back when in 2013. Maybe I want to go in there and get rid of it because it's outdated. So that's the Active Public Links report. Recent activity for files, similar to the Workspace Audit Log, this one, but it focuses specifically on file activity. So if you were a big file user, you may decide you want to go in here and play with this report. The Administrators report, very similar to the Workspace Access by Internal Members report. This is best used to export periodically to keep track of who had access to the system when. Use case here is legal teams. There are a couple law firms that use iMeet Central. They run this report, I think they run it monthly. At the end of the month, they run this thing because they like to keep track of who had certain permissions throughout the year. The reason being, if ever anything were to go wrong and they needed to go back and say, well, who had keys to the system when a file went missing, they're able to go back in here and they can use this stuff for litigation and whatnot. So I know, kind of heavy, but that's what that administrator's report is best used for, is to export it and keep it for historical purposes. All right, just a few more. Search history. This is a fun one. There are a couple search history reports here. Search history by keyword popularity with no matches, and by keyword. All right. This report is triggered by a person using the advanced search feature. Let me show you what that means. If I'm in the search window up here and I type in the word brochures and I just search right now, it will not trigger this report. But if I click on advanced search, I don't know if you knew about this, but you can do advanced filtered searches here, search for workspaces, advanced search. You can do all kinds of fun stuff in here. But you can come in here and search for stuff, narrow it down, and click on search. When you use an advanced search, our system captures that information. It captures a couple things. It captures what you searched for. It captures how many results there were returned. And it also shows you when it was last run. So this is search history by keyword. But there's a couple other one here that's by keyword popularity. Here's why this is a good report to run specific to teams that use iMeet Central as a digital asset management tool or a DAM. If you train your users to use the search to find stuff, so if you use tagging, for example, and you say, well, if you need to find stuff by tags, you can type in the tag and then just come down to advanced search. And then from here, you can say, search for anything tagged with tag, for example. It's a common process I've seen with people who use a DAM. Sometimes company admins like to go into that report and they like to see, let me go back over there, They like to see a couple things. One of them is how often people are searching for something, but the other one that's really neat is this one. By keyword popularity and no matches, this will show you if people are looking for things that aren't in the system. Oftentimes this data is most nutritious after a conversation with a user where you teach someone to use advanced search and then you can check on them like later in the week, see if they're actually using it. The last two reports to look at here. The company audit log. Similar to the Workspace Audit Log, the company audit log lets you see when users have been added or removed, when workspaces have been deleted, that's a big one, or when people have failed a login attempt. I don't see people use this report a whole lot. I usually see people use like the Workspace Audit Log report because they like to see when comments were made or tasks were deleted. But this is good to keep track of when somebody creates a user group and adds a person to a user group. If you're wondering who did that, you can find it here in this report. And again, you can export it as a CSV if you wanted to like search for something specific or sort and filter. The general rule of thumb here with reporting, everybody, is that these are, what I'm looking at here is really sort of like a preview of the report. If you really want to crunch the data, you're going to want to click on Export to CSV and run it through like Excel. We're not going to try and say that we are better than Excel at crunching data. It is the king. So that's why we always give you this option here to export to CSV. And the final one, workflow rules. There's a workflow rules report here that can be pretty handy. It shows a list of all your current workflow rules. It's just a nice reminder that you have thorough workflow rule names and that they're currently worth having. If any of you have worked with me before, you know that I like to name my workflow rules a very specific way, and it's a piece of advice I give everyone. Workflow rules, you can see here, some of these things kind of make sense, like email, notify supervisor when a new request is submitted. This is one, it says new SAL request. I have no idea what that rule does. So just a neat little tip. Make sure you title your workflow rules appropriately. It helps you to look at reports like this and know exactly what these things are. All right. Let's take a quick look then at now the Workspace reports, and then I'm going to open it up for any questions. So start thinking about if you have questions, and in a moment I'll stop and I'll take a look at that global chat. A Workspace administrator has access to this Settings tab in a Workspace, and they can come down here to Usage Reports. And this one only takes a second to look at. Members by last login shows you when users have last accessed the Workspace. It's great for knowing how long it's been since somebody has visited the Workspace. So you can catch people sometimes if someone isn't completing their tasks or isn't uploading files, and you're like, how's it going? And they're like, oh, I'm just so busy. I haven't even had a chance to log in. You can look at this and you can say, oh, I saw you were in there this morning. What's going on? Page views by day shows how active the Workspace has been over a period of time and by month. And finally, the audit log report. Again, a really powerful tool for our administrators to go in here and see whether or not people have been making comments, deleting things, adding users, and so on. So you see that I just created this Workspace about an hour ago. All right. So those are our system reports. What I'd like to do now with the remainder of our time is talk through a use case for a custom report and show you how custom reports work. Patrick has a question. I recently asked if iMeet could modify the custom reporting view. I want the scroll bar to be visible left to right. I need to be able to see the columns when more than 12 are selected as they disappear from view and you can't scroll to them. Thank you, Patrick, for bringing that up. So just so all of you know, our product roadmap does include some upgrades and improvements to reporting. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is on that, but Patrick, I have seen your suggestion come through. It has been brought up to our product team. If any of you are in the system and you're playing around with reporting and you start to see some of these things, we love and we invite user feedback. It's actually how we pose our product roadmap. The roadmap is written and scheduled through the rest of 2017. I know they're debating what they're going to be doing in 2018, and I don't know exactly what's on their list, but reporting is a top priority. So your points here are valid 100%. The scroll bar and the visibility across multiple rows is something that we're currently looking at. We're estimating what it would require to write that code. Okay, so let's walk through a hypothetical situation here. And I hope that answers your question, Patrick. All right, so here we go. Custom reporting. So we're going to do a little make-believe. Imagine Mr. Rogers' trolley is riding across. I should get a Mr. Rogers trolley and put it on my slideshow right here, because we're going to go into imagination land. All right, everybody. We work with clients on website updates. We're a hypothetical example here. We work with clients on website updates. That's what we do. And we create a workspace per project with a milestone per website update. And so we have a milestone with task lists in it, and we assign people to those tasks, and people work through their project plan. We have an issue. The issue is that project managers are saying that projects are completed. So the people in charge of these website updates, they say, we're done, but we still see overdue tasks. We're also hearing from clients saying that we're missing details. The font wasn't right, or the graphic wasn't spec'd appropriately. So we're looking back at our process and we're saying, well, what are we getting wrong? So here's our theory. Our theory is that if our users had better training, we'd see fewer incomplete tasks and we'd see better projects. The other thing that we think is that maybe there are some redundant tasks that users have become numb to. This is probably top 5 biggest adoption issues with iMeet Central as it relates to a configuration, is that last point. There may be redundant tasks that users become numb to, meaning we've built out project plans with way too many tasks. People are doing the work, they're getting their day done, they become sort of deaf to the noise in iMeet Central because there are so many tasks. What ends up happening is 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now, they actually start forgetting to do important things because they just associate iMeet Central with noise. So here's how we're going to try and solve for this. We're going to use some reporting here, and we're going to figure out some things. We're going to gather data by giving project managers the ability to mark an entire project as complete, even if there are multiple milestones and even if there are incomplete tasks. So we need our project managers who say, well, when it's done, it's done. We need to give them the ability to just let us know in a report that a project is complete. We need to track whether tasks are the responsibility of a particular team segment or a client or a department, regardless of the assignee. So if I've got 5 people on my team and they're working on various projects, I might want to see like if one particular person is missing tasks, but maybe I want to see if there's actually like a team of people who has a problem. We need to record whether our team members have been properly trained, right? Because our theory is that if they've been trained, they'll do a better job. So we need to be able to track that. And finally, we want to identify trends across incomplete tasks to find redundancy. All right, so I'm going to do a couple quick steps here. Over the next 10 minutes, we're going to dive in. I'm going to show you some stuff I would do, and you can watch and take notes. Maybe you'll have some fresh ideas of your own. But here we go. Let's dive in. So I'm going to do a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some custom property fields to track this data and to track my theory. So I'm going to go into Company Setup, and I'm going to add a couple custom property fields. The first one I'm going to add is I'm going to add a Workspace custom property field called Project Status. It's going to allow someone to indicate at the Workspace level whether it's done, it's in progress, it's delayed, and that way I can use that for my reporting filter. So I'm going to go to Workspace Properties right here, and I'm going to go to Add Workspace Properties, and I'm going to add a field. I'm going to call it Project Status, and I'm going to make it a multiple choice drop-down. And I'm going to say in progress and completed are the 2 options. I click on Create Field, And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that field to a form that my workspace will use. I have a form called campaign form, and there is my project status field right there. So it's been added here to the display layout, the edit layout, and the creation wizard layout. If I needed to make changes to that field, I can go back to my Workspace Properties tab, go to Edit Workspace Properties, and I should find it right down here. So if I wanted to add an option, I could. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom task property field to keep track of which department is responsible for a given task. So I'm going to go to Task Properties, and I'm going to add a task property field, and I'm going to call it Department. I'm going to make it a multiple choice, drop down, and I'm going to say my designers, my copywriters, or the client. Now, remember when I said way back when that it's important to make sure you put these property fields somewhere that's accessible. Well, if you've played with task property fields, you know that they're a little bit difficult and cumbersome to make changes to. We kind of bury them in the task details area. But if you want to make one of them really easy to change, add it to your Workspace task list layout. So I'm going to go to my Workspace task list layout. I'm going to add a column, and I'm going to add that department field. And I'll put it there at the end. We'll see that in just a moment, how that looks in a workspace. All right, so I've got a Workspace property field called Project Status. I've got a task property field called Department. The last thing I want to create for my reporting is a user profile field to track when a person has been trained. So I'm going to go to User Profile, and I'm going to create a custom profile field, and I'm going to say training date. And I'll make that a date field. Okay, so I've got my 3 data points. I can create my reporting matrix. When a person's been trained, what department they're in, or what department the task is assigned to, and what the overall project status is. Let's see what this looks like now in a workspace. So I have a workspace that I've created, the 2018 Macy's website redesign. So everything that we're doing for the Macy's 2018 website redesign, we're doing in this workspace. I've got some people in this workspace, great. And I'm going to go into my project management tab. Actually, I'm going to start by going into the settings area and make sure that this workspace is using that properties form. So I'm going to come in here to configuration options, and where it says select the properties form, I'm going to say campaign form. That's the one that had that project status field in it. I'm going to click on update. So now if I look at the properties tab of this workspace, ta-da, project status, sweet. In progress, why not? I'm going to go into my project management tab, and I'm going to go to tasks and milestones, and I'm going to create some project timelines real quick. I'm going to say create a milestone. I'm going to say a website development milestone. This is one of my templates, and I'll give it a due date of November 30. And I'll create one more, because why not? And I'm going to title this one Banner Refresh. And we're going to do a banner refresh end of December, just before the new year. So I've got some project plans. I'm just dropping these things in here real quick. Now check this out. If I go into one of these task lists, like preparation, notice that there is my department column. Cool. I can go in here and I can say the designers are responsible for this, the copywriters are responsible for that, and the designers are responsible for this. That's different than who I'm assigning to things. I can say that these 2 tasks are going to be assigned to Helen, and this task down here is going to be assigned to Lily. So you can see here that the logic is, I understand who's responsible for completing the task, but more importantly, these 2 tasks are assigned to my designers, and this task is assigned to my copywriters. It can help with long-term reporting if I notice that certain departments are better or worse at using iMeet Central than others. I think a better way to illustrate this would be to say that this isn't assigned to Helen, this is assigned to David, right? So Helen and David are designers. Lily is a copywriter. I can now run reports and say, most of my incomplete tasks are from designers. And I can then have a conversation with the team instead of just a person. Let me go ahead and add a couple more assignees here. I'll go ahead and assign all of these to Nat Tate. And I will assign all of these ones up here to Helen. All right, so I'm picking on some people here. And why not? I'll just put a couple more data points in here. All right, so teams are working through their projects. Helen completes a task. Great. I come down here. I look in concepting. Where was I? Preparation, I think it was. Preparation. Where was that other one where I had everybody? I'll put it here. Why not? We'll say assigned to David. So David and I'm going to go to bulk edit right here, so more bulk edit, and I can actually just change them all right here, which is kind of neat. Great. Okay, so I've got some data in the system. David's completed a couple tasks. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to skip forward in time. We're going to pretend that this project is done. The Macy's 2018 website redesign project is finished. Hooray! Final deliverables are out. Website looks great. Project manager says, I'm all done, but I've got all these overdue tasks. The project manager can use this property field in the properties area to say, this is completed. Regardless of what the tasks and milestones area says, it's done. Why those things didn't get completed, I don't know. Maybe we need to talk to some people and figure out. But our project manager says it's done. Now we dive into our report. I'm going to go to create a report. And I get all these cool reports. Now, I'm not going to go into detail here into what all of these reports can do. The best way to learn, unfortunately, is to play with it. The more time you spend in here creating reports and trying it out, the more you'll learn. But what I will tell you is that one of the most granular tasks is a custom tasks report. Now, underneath these headers, you'll notice some tasks that are sort of like pre-designed, like task by workspace, tasks by assignee. You can use these if you want. Our developers made these because we thought they'd be valuable. But a custom report, whether it be a custom task or a custom milestone report, those allow you a lot of flexibility into what kind of data you want to pull together. I'll click on Create. I'm going to pull in the columns that are important to me. I can add filters and I can add columns here in the top left corner, and I'm going to pull in some columns. I'll start by getting rid of some things. I'll get rid of task start date. So I'm going to click this pencil here and click on remove column. Budgeted time, not caring about that for my report. Patrick, I see your question. Give me just a moment. Cumulative time, I'm going to get rid of that. Milestone title, I'll leave. Workspace title, due date, assignee, task. I'll keep all that stuff. These columns are good for now. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some filters. There's a filter here called task due date is on this month. Let me get rid of that. And I should start seeing some tasks. Great. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me yet. I'm now going to pull in some of my columns. I'm going to pull in the department. So I see the department column right here. Great. And if I scroll down, I should eventually see some data points. There we are. So there are a couple floating in there. And what the heck, I'm going to add a filter to say I only want to see things where the department field is populated. So I'm going to say add filter, department is not empty. There we go. I have a much shorter list. The other thing I want to say is show me projects that are completed, right? So that's a workspace property field. I'm going to go to add filter. And notice again that sort of like matrix environment. I can pull in stuff about assignees. I can pull in stuff about who created. Like, I want to see who created the task. But for this one, I want to say Workspace property fields. And I scroll down to find project status, and I'm going to say project status is completed. Okay, now I'm starting to get a little bit more information here. Now this is starting to look interesting. I see that I have a project that is marked as complete. It is the Métis 2018 website redesign. And if I were to go and add one more filter, I can bring in task status and say is not completed. Now we're getting interesting. Now I have a report I can act on. This is a project that's done. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tasks that weren't finished. Of those, if I were to group by department here, if I click that little pencil icon and click on group by column, 4 of them were for the copywriters and 4 were for the designers. Okay, this is interesting. I'm going to save this report. I'm going to click on Save Report right here in the top right corner, and I'm going to title it. I'm going to say Incomplete Tasks from Completed Projects by Department. And I'm going to save it. When you save a report, you can go back and find your saved reports by clicking your name in the top right corner. Coming down here where it says Reports. Now, once you save a report, it's going to be in your My Reports area. You can make changes to that report by opening it and just playing with your filters and columns and then clicking Save Report again. You can also copy this link right here and send it to anybody else in the system. You can send it in an email, you can post it in a comment, you can create a hyperlink, and people can follow this link and look at the report, but they cannot make changes to it. If you want to allow another person of the system the ability to make changes to this report, you're going to go to the Options button up here, and you're going to click on Edit Properties, and you're going to share it with another user. So you can say, I want David to be able to read and write this report. I'm working with David on this. I want him to have the ability to make changes. If you have a report shared with you, you can find it in your Reports page under the Shared tab. Now, there was one last theory that we wanted to check. Right now, we've got some information with our report, and that is we're able to see that projects that have been marked as complete tend to have incomplete tasks, and they are evenly distributed between designers and copywriters. But our theory was if our team was better trained, we would see fewer incomplete tasks. So the only way we track that is by tracking their training date. We created a user profile field called training date. And as a company administrator, I can make changes to a person's profile. I can go into the internal members tab. I can go to David's profile right here. And I can come down to the bottom, and there is my custom training date field. And I can say, David was trained on October 11th, 2016. I can do the same thing for Helen. I can go down to Helen right here. And I can make her training date here as well. All right, we're almost done. We're at the top of the hour. Hang in there for another 2 minutes. Patrick asked a question. In a user profile, can you mandate custom fields? Can I mandate the default fields? I'm confused about mandate. Do you mean required, a required field? If you go to the custom fields area and you go to user profile and you look at edit custom fields, you can make them required. So if you want to have a required field in there, you can do that here. That is in the edit user profile custom fields area. All right, so to wrap up our theory, we've recorded training dates for David. We've recorded training dates for Helen. Let's look back at that report and go to the incomplete tasks by completed projects for completed projects by department, and I'm going to add a column. The column is a user's training date. That property field is in the assignee dropdown, and you will find that in here there is a training date field. I'm going to save it one more time, and now let's see if we can't tell the whole story. In this project, there are 4 incomplete tasks. The project manager has said that this project is done. 4 of the tasks are the responsibility of our copywriters. David was on 3 of them. He was trained on October 11th of 2016. My theory is that if I went and I retrained David on this process and I updated that training date, I would see fewer incomplete tasks by David over the next couple of months. I see that for my designers, Helen was also responsible for some things that didn't get marked as complete. She was trained on October 3rd, 2016. These are pretty old training dates. But I can also see up here at the top, Lily doesn't have a training date. Maybe I put too much on her. So I would go to Lily and say, hey, Lily, let me show you how to use iMeet Central. After I do that, I can just update her profile. And I can say, Lily had her training on today. So that wraps up our sort of demo of custom reports. Danielle asked a question. Whenever we run time tracking reports, such as budgeted hours versus actual hours, if the user logs time on a task multiple times, it shows up as a budgeted multiple time in the report. So if I log an hour 4 days, if I log an hour 4 days on a task that is budgeted for 4 hours, the report will show my 4 hours, but will show 16 budgeted hours. Is there a way to combat this? Yes. That's a really great question. Thank you for that. Okay, budgeted time. I will answer that in the system. Budgeted time, so everybody can see. This is a great one. So budgeted time is a feature related to tasks. It allows you as a project manager to define how long you think it should take a person to do something. I'm going to go into a task estimate. Probably not a great example, but that's fine. You'll notice that over on the right-hand side it says time tracking, budgeted and time spent. I can go in and edit this task, and I can say that this task should take a certain number of hours. Budgeted time is very different from a task start and due date. The task start and due date defines the number of business days you will give a person to complete the task. The budgeted time should be the total number of hours you think would be required a person to complete it. It may take them 3 days, but they might actually only work on it for 3 hours because they have other things they're doing. So, if you have a task that starts and ends across 1, 2, I think that's 3 business days, March 18th, May 18th, 1, 2, 3, do not put 24 hours here. The budgeted time should not match the duration of the task start and due date. Instead, it should be the number of hours you actually think a person will bill or work. So if this person assigned this task has 3 business days to do it, I think it will take them a combined 4 hours over all 3 days to get it done. So when they go in and they log time against this task, they can start on the 16th, it has to be done on the 18th. Let's pretend that on the 16th, they log in and they start working on it, they compose the estimate and they send it, and they're like, that took me half an hour. They click on log time right here, and they say, that took me half an hour on May 16th. On May 17th, they work on it for 2 hours. They log time on the 17th. Log time, 2 hours. And on May 18th, the day that it is due, they log another 2 hours. The total time spent now exceeds the budgeted time, but the time that you budget is not based on the number of business days, it's the number of hours that you actually expect them to work on the project. So, if you log an hour 4 days on a task that is budgeted for 4 hours, the report will show my 4 hours, but will show budgeted 16 hours. Is there a way to combat this? The answer is reduce your budgeted hours so that it doesn't match the number of days. but instead the amount of time you expect a person to work on it. Okay, Danielle, so if you run a report to show time track that week, it will show up 4 hours budgeted every day that you log, so it will show the time adding up that you logged, but it will show 16 total hours. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. So if you're running a report and you want to show budgeted time, I see what you're saying. Yes, yes, yes. So let me make sure we're on the same page. Tasks, custom task, create. Let me create a report and see if I'm getting it right. So you're saying that you're running a report and you're pulling in the budgeted hours and actual worked hours into that report. So budgeted time, cumulative time, and so on. And let me do a quick filter here, and I'll say budgeted time is, we'll say greater than or equal to 1. All right. And then I'll boil it down to, we'll say create page templates. So I'm going to go filter, task title contains create page template. So just to try and narrow this thing down. So if you sum it, you'll see that it shows that for the same, although these are different tasks, this one's assigned to John and this one is not. But it sums things. Let me see if I can't create the report you're looking at here. Just a minute. Just a minute. Macy's 2018, project management, tasks and milestones. Preparation. Startup meeting. Where was it? Hold on. I'm going to find it. Add filter, workspace title. Contains Macy's. There we go. Estimate, budgeted time, cumulative time. So, you know, I'm not able to recreate it. So I'd be curious, Danielle, to take this offline and chat with you offline to see if there's something specific about the report that's been written, because what I'm seeing here is that if I run a custom task report, my budgeted time doesn't split up even if there are multiple time entries. So are you running a time report? Because I know that sometimes if you do it this way, you can sometimes create repeating totals. Add filter, workspace, workspace title, contains Macy. Here we go. Add column, task, budgeted time. Is this what you're doing? Because it looks like I have the option here with this budgeted time column to sum it or not. I see you are absolutely right. If you sum it, it will say 4, 4, 4, and it'll say total of 12, when actually there was just 4. So it is adding it together. I would try and run. Well, how did you get it to not? What you do is if you click this little pencil icon, you get the option to sum a column. And so if it's summed, it's wrong. If you unsum it, remove sum column, it disappears, and now you get this sort of behavior where it says Andrea Caravis worked 4.5 hours against a task where the budgeted time for the task was 4 hours. So check and see if it's summing it funny and play with it that way. And all of you who are still watching, I don't know if that drummed up any questions for you as well. Thank you, Danielle. That was a great question. Thanks for waiting for me to figure it out. takes me a little time sometimes. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day. Bye-bye.